7 o'clock. Law enforcement committee meeting together. All you said is on a call, or?
Yes, he is. We'll come back as soon as he's able, but he's on a domestic, so we have no idea how long he'll be occupied.
Thing deal with the review of the letter received in the village board the other night. Wanted that on. And
So that's next.
yeah, I wanted to talk about that at all or whatever. If you guys had a chance to read through it, but we're gonna see Ben as a response to that letter.
And if you'll like, I can certainly walk you through this, so you don't have to read the entire thing. We want to be as transparent as possible, so really it's your call. Happy to walk through it for, anybody else who's.
I think that would be a good idea. If you guys have questions here, that'd be the time to stop them and ask.
Yes. And it's completely up to the board as far as whether you want this to be like an open forum where there's active feedback, or if you want it to be more formal, or questions are, held for the end or public comment. So.
Yes, we don't mind a little addition, but we don't want arguing and any of that type of stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would agree. It's just gonna make this go a lot longer. So, well, thank you, everybody. And I'll try to kind of keep myself on that side of the room. It's not really designed for this.
Yeah.
As an ideal layout. Thank you for your time. Members of the board, members of the public. If I refer to you as counsel, I apologize. Kind of goes back to my other life. So I have to switch gears a little bit. But for the public that may or may not be aware, we received a letter from Mary Winkie after Clear Lake Days, particularly the car show. She had a lot of questions, concerns that were brought forward. Some of them are valid, right? So after that letter was received, it's not the proper place to have an argument or a debate in a public board meeting. So we reserved our comments. This is our opportunity to give you guys back the answers to those questions that she put forth. So if at any time you have questions or want more detail, stop me, let me know. I'll add as much clarifying detail as I can. We want to be as transparent as possible. So Chris Jackson during that meeting made a comment that will resonate with me. And he said all through his life, he's heard transparency, transparency, transparency. But we need to act on that. We need to do it. We need to live it, right? So after talking it through, transparency is key. It's paramount. It's part of communication. Roger gave us the order earlier today. These meetings are going to be recorded and broadcast just like we did at the school 10 years ago. And I think that's a really, really positive thing to make sure the community stays engaged, right? Any questions so far? Again, Paul apologizes. I don't think he intended on having to run out and deal with stuff, but if he comes back, he'll certainly be able to add his perspective to this as well. Just kind of going down to the order on the letter that was received from Mary. We take this stuff very seriously, right? We live here, we work here, my kids go to school here. I've got members of the community here that we live, work, and play with, right? This is our community. We're not just the police. So when somebody says, you know what, you're being perceived negatively, we definitely want to get out in front of that. We want to get to a point where everybody understands each other. This is kind of our answer to that, I guess. So the first one that she had called attention to was the staffing on extra events. So this one in particular was kind of geared towards, okay, why do we put extra police officers at some things and not others? And the short answer really is it's based on a risk profile. There is something that we do in emergency management that is known as a hazard assessment, right? So we go through, we sat down as a group. This is 10, 15 years of planning over the last, couple of decades. We look at everything that could happen. And we assign a risk profile to it. It's based on the likelihood that it would happen, how often it could happen, how bad it is when it does happen, and how long it will last to get back out of that. So I do have a copy of the incident command paperwork that we use. This is our ICS plan that we put together every year. This is the one from 2026. This is not a public document as it stands, so please be respectful of that. It is marked confidential. I have 5 copies, 5 go out, 5 come back. It is public record once it's redacted, but I think everybody could appreciate that if we put our staging areas and our incident response plans out to the public, that's the definition of insane. Like, we wouldn't want to do that. But this is the level of detail that we go through anytime we make planning decisions. I do have a couple for the public. Anybody wants to say one? Any given year, this is probably about 15 hours worth of work. It usually involves Polk County Emergency Management, Lisa McMahon. Don Burrows is the chief deputy. He was part of it this year. We have some civilian staff from the actual event. Lisa, Amy, I think Amy, you've been, or when you've been part of it for past years, maybe not this year, but in the past. We also have Department of Public Works folks that are part of it. It literally takes a village. Fire department's been a part of it forever, and we have, obviously our police officers involved. When we do these hazard assessments, we take a look at things like, what is the risk profile for this event? Do we have people that are walking? Do we have vehicles that are involved? Do we have alcohol? Do we have children? Do we have heat? Do we have weather? All these things, right? When we start going down through the line on these demo derby, weddings, ATV, UTV rides, and I'm just sorry for reading this word for word, right? Weddings, they're a small event venue. Usually people are contained. Yes, there are people that drive when they leave, but they're not like intermixed. You don't have vehicles driving through the wedding reception or anything like that. ATV rides, we have been part of those in the past, big motorcycle rides. Some of the motorcycle organizations will actually call us and say, hey, we got 200 motorcycles coming to town. Can you block traffic for us? Can you make sure we can get out of here? Absolutely, we've done that, right? Some of the other stuff, Demo Derby, we've had officers there for as far back as I can remember. Used to be a part of Clear Lake Days. The village basically says anytime we provide public safety services to an event like that, it's got to be charged back. Clear Lake Days is the one exception. And for whatever reason, that's existed forever and a day. So the Demo Derby actually, they have to pay for emergency medical services to have the ambulance down there. Misty's got a rate that she puts out to them. That's how they contract those services. With Clear Lake Days, it's no different, right? Other than the fact that it's included in the package. So again, you guys see the kind of level of detail that goes into that. It's not by accident. It's not Ben waking up and saying, this is what I think. We need to have 5 people, 10 people, whatever it is there. That's not really it for you, When we start looking at the number of people that we expect to be at Clear Lake Days, whether it's the car show or otherwise, and this really kind of starts to get into, well, I'll go back on the gatherings for people. One of the questions that she had asked is, why did we record the license plates for the vehicles that were there, right? And the answer is we didn't record every license plate. The board in the past and this year had directed, do not allow burnouts. That's what we were told. That's what we do. There was intelligence, people that said, we're going to do them anyway, right? Officers made a decision to say, you know what, these are the cars that are likely to do burnouts. Capture the plates. If something happens, now we can go back and look, right? Was that the greatest decision in the world? Some people would defend that up and down. Obviously, it didn't land well with the community. We understand, right? Moral of the story is, on the car show specifically, our officers don't have a problem with burnouts, right? What that one comes down to is it's illegal. And if we want it to be illegal, the board can do that. When the board says, don't allow burnouts, and then we write a citation, can the officers, should they be yelled at for that? Like, should they be taken to task because we did what was asked of them?
When did we say that we didn't allow burnouts?
We did that last year.
Last year. And that was just a rolling thing?
It has more to do with liability than anything else.
Yeah, you guys sanction the burnouts. We'll be there treating them on. I think it's okay. But this is not us making a decision thing on this.
I don't know if that's necessarily the question, because I don't remember it coming up at all myself. You're talking that specific, not the.
I understood, but you guys can
I'm
sanction.
saying we should or shouldn't. I'm just saying.
Right. No, and that's, there's some information kind of provided down later in the packet that says, here's some considerations you're going to want to consider, like, do we allow alcohol near the driver's area? Do you have it separated off with barriers? That way, people don't get hit by flying debris. Somebody pointed out to me, like, hey, you know what? If a car can do 180, the tires can do 180. That's where that stuff can fly back. Yes, Balsam Lake used to allow it. They canceled it this year. They said no burnouts. Even though they were encouraged, they were expressly prohibited because the event organizers couldn't get insurance while sanctioning the burnouts. That doesn't mean you guys can't. It just means you gotta do things however you want to do them, or assume the risk and the liability therein. But our officers, we don't objectively have any concern whether or not there is not a burnout. What can't happen is we can't have members of the community forcing the police department to not enforce it when there are legal sanctioned venues. Fireworks are illegal. This is a huge one. You guys can issue fireworks permits. Happens every year. Solves the problem. Right? Again, we don't go out and report every license plate, but if we know that somebody says, I'm going to break into a building tomorrow, we're going to wait around that building and see what happens. You know, we don't like the look of it, but I think we have an opportunity to fix it. Going into the staffing for Clear Lake Days, that was a big topic in that letter, talking about how many officers do we have, how many were at that event, why were they there, what were their roles, what did they do. Again, I actually have my emergency management certificate. I've got over 2,500 hours of continual training on top of having 2 bachelor's degrees. And a lot of that 2,000 hours is in emergency management to get that certificate. They spent a ton of time on pre-planned event planning, on staffing considerations, on hazard mitigation, on all this stuff. Now, the section that you're going to see in here says the national standard is 1 officer for every 75 to 150 people. That is not a hard standard. That is a recommended guideline. Okay. What that means is if you have a book reading for a bunch of elementary kids and you have 150 elementary kids, you probably don't need 2 officers for that, right? That's different than what's the wrestling stuff that you guys had up there? That draws an entirely different crowd, right? That might be a little bit more of a risk that we would assess than even just a traditional street dance, right? That being said, our numbers have always been based around 1,000, kind of averaging that peak attendance for Clear Lake Days. 20 years ago, I'll bet you it was probably closer to 3,000 when it was peaked out down by the clinic. I mean, yeah, there was standing room only. I don't know, a lot of you guys probably been around since then, and there's a lot of people there, right? The fact that there's 1,000 people, the recommended staffing is usually going to be between that 4 and 8 mark. We had 4 sworn officers this year. No extra help other than that. We did have 2 support units that were volunteers, right? They weren't units. They were one of them was running communications out of here and doing his radio thing. The moral of the story is we're on the low end for that. The actual event range is set at 500 to 1,500. There's data based on the community civic and commerce. Thank you. Civic and commerce basically showing kind of what the attendance numbers based on sales. There's some projections. We don't count people, unfortunately. But the thing to remember is when we're looking at that, you know, and I have a little exercise that we can go through on estimating crowd size. This will actually be kind of, if you permit me, we'll have a little bit of fun with the crowd. You know, everybody says like, oh, well, we only had, you know, 500 people, 200 people, whatever that is, right? One of the most difficult things in any profession is estimating crowd size.
So your staffing is based on this number that were your approximation of the Clear Lake Days. You're not doing it by day, because obviously Thursday is not going to be the same as Friday or something.
We don't staff the same number of officers every day. Our peaks really are centered around those evenings on Fridays and Saturdays. There was only one, it was me working Thursday night, and there's only 2 working on Sunday. We did not run the full gamut. We did not have any of the support functions running on Sunday. That's actually the lightest of kind of the main run.
But you had everybody for the parade though, didn't we?
Yeah, we ran everybody for the parade because we usually get into a little bit of a pickle with vehicles that get left on the street, and then trying to shut down the street usually tends to be. We've had the state patrol do that in the past. This year they were short staffed as well, and they kind of did the whole, well, we'll maybe send you somebody, and we said, well, the way we're going to deal with that is we'll just have our guys working extra hours. Fortunately, that's exactly what happened. So this is a neat little visualization here. If you look up there on the screen. Anybody want to take a shot and guess how many are in each one? That's a football field. Those are people. Yeah, it's kind of set as basically a standard event. You know, people are going to cluster up, they're going to do their thing.
People.
That's 1,000 people on the one on the left, that's 500 in the middle, and that's 200 on the right. You know, so comments like we could drive a dump truck down the street. I could drive 3 of them down the 500 dot mark and still not hit anybody without even trying. The density of a crowd on a football field at 1,000 people is 48, I believe. I think it's 48. 48 people in every 100 feet, I believe it is. It's remarkably sparse. I'd have to go back and look at the actual map on it.
Well, my comment, because I'm the one that made that comment,
Okay.
it went back to, yeah, I mean, there isn't many people that show up anymore. And it's like,
Correct.
why is it? You know, are we competing with other town festivities? You know, are people at work, are people on vacation?
People our age or my age, I used to be down there all the time. They don't go out and do it as much, or
Yeah,
they
I don't.
feel like me, home early.
There's a simple reality. I mean, I've been here for 23 years now, I think it is, 2003. So yeah, I think May was my 23rd year. 22 years ago, every Clear Lake days, we were sending people to Regents Hospital. You know, the nickname Black Eye McFly came from Clear Lake Days foot. That's where he got punched, he fell backwards, he hit his head on the curb, and his life changed forever, right? 3-4 years in a row, we literally sent people to Regents Hospital from the fights that were down there, right? The bars were open until 2:30 on the weekends. They were open until 2 a.m. every other day of the week. Now they're not. Like that's a shift in society, you know, and everybody says, well, it's a pandemic, it's this and that. I think it's largely generational. We're hiring cops and I'm seeing cops getting hired at other agencies that we ask them like, what do you guys do when you go home? And their answer almost universally is we have a beer, we go online and we game with each other. That is not the way my generation grew up, but things have shifted, right? You know, I look at whether it's Clear Lake Days or anything else, and Tom, your son, Jared, I see him at Clear Lake Days for 10 minutes and then he's out. I don't think I've ever really seen him downtown. You know, whatever the reason is, I don't know, but it is a trend that started long before any of this conversation existed.
He does go, by the way.
I believe it.
Well, I know that one of the other things we've competed with the last couple of years is Deer Park has moved their 4th of July festivities. So now on our Saturday is also a big garden tractor pull over there. And this year, I think it was Friday night, they did their big fireworks show. And prior to that, it was always a different weekend.
Well, and Milltown has their festivities that weekend too, and rain.
And a lot of the research I did, because I was actually curious as some of these assumptions were being stated, is okay, let's look at what's out there for real data. I'm a numbers guy, if you haven't figured that out. I like data. People love to work emotion into things, and data is the equalizer because it doesn't lie and it doesn't sway based on how it wants it to look, right? People can manipulate numbers, absolutely. At the end of the day, a lot of the research that I found said that the normal small town events are suffering enormously because people have gotten niche. And what I mean by that is they forego the Clear Lake days, the cheese days, the Turtle Lake days for a Renaissance festival or something where they're willing to drive 3 hours for. They want something that's special and different and unique. And I guess, you know, I look back at my family and how we do our vacations and where we select things. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't take my family out to, you know, another carnival with a bouncy house, but if there was something niche about it, you know, I'm more inclined to be like, hey kids, let's go see the world's largest banana or whatever it is, you know? And so I think there's just a shift in that. I think the pandemic changed a lot of things that for some people will never go back. But the moral of the story is based on the staffing levels of the income, and we have people from Civic and Commerce. Can you describe what your trend is over the last 5 years?
This year was up for us,
compared to last year.
which every year after, obviously, we didn't have one in COVID, during COVID. And so we're slowly kind of getting back into the realm of things.
Can I use that document that I had made?
Yeah.
Okay. Amy had shared some data with, and I made some type of an attempt because we don't have a turnstile there. To count people and visitors, and maybe that's something we could do better. But this is, I only had one copy of that, I apologize, but this is based off of the discretionary spending. So beer sales, the ticket sales, I had to do a little bit of crunching because the way Badgerland works, they charge $18,000 to come in. If you don't get $18,000 in sales at the carnival, they have to pay the difference, so they take a loss. Anything over 20,000, they get 20% of those proceeds goes directly as their profit. Based on their profit and loss numbers, we can actually establish at $30 a wristband or whatever it is, how many tickets were bought up there based on the number of beverages that were sold. Averaging $26 a person is kind of what the industry seemed to be for a night uptown. We can estimate what attendance is, and basically you can see over the last 2 years that we actually have solid data. It predicted a straight upward trend of, I think it was like 1,200 people in 2023, going to 13, and then just a slight elevation in 2025 from 2024. So, I mean, nothing is actually declining other than the major dip coming down on the pandemic. So again, I would not swear by any of that data, but it's a best guess based on what we see, based on the numbers that are available.
Well, our festivals are becoming more localized because, in my opinion, people are afraid to drive. I mean, they're not gonna travel to, I'm not gonna drive to Boyceville and have some beers, take a chance of getting drunk or getting hit. You know, so people's kind of stable things in their areas. The consequences are a lot higher now than what they used to be. I think that's part of it myself, but
I think that's a fair statement.
I definitely don't travel to Boyceville, Pickle Fest. You know, it's too far to drive.
Well, and you know, that's the question is like, would you, if there was something really special there?
but that's the way it used to be in Clear Lake, because, I mean, people came from everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they traveling.
We know that.
Well, for years, we had a softball tournament down at the park then.
I think it was my dad's band personally.
Yeah, probably.
So, all in all, and I was gonna pull a picture, but I have a picture back in my office when we talk about the number of officers. In 2012, we had 6 officers here. So we had 2 full-timers and 4 part-timers, and the part-timers worked, you know, almost full-time hours. Our peak was, I believe, 7 total. We had 5 and 2. And then that was back, I forget, Roger, you were here when that was consolidated down? 2013, 14?
Somewhere in there.
And so what had happened is, rather than maintaining a bunch of part-time officers where you have to train them, put uniforms on them, I mean, the dang radios that we have to buy to be compatible with the county system are $8,000 a piece. You know, that stuff is not cheap, right? So having more officers means a bigger budget. They got consolidated down. We took 3 part-timers and turned that into 1, or 4 part-timers, turned that into 1 full-timer to have 3 full-timers. And then because I was kind of the forever part-time guy, the board was kind enough to let me stay on and not have to go find another job, which I appreciate. And that's why I'm here today. But at the end of the day, we haven't added any part-time since then, and we've maintained that staffing number for the last at least 10 years, if not more.
You're talking that number is at Clear Lake Day is what you're talking
So that is our total staffing here complete.
about, full-time. or-
Correct. 3 full-timers and then myself as a part-timer. The numbers for Clear Lake days were only our staff here.
How does that, well, I know how Clear Lake's, but what is that significantly with the other villages in our
If you
area?
look at the very last page on this, we actually pulled all of that data for you. We are smack dab in the middle. So the traditional measure is 1 cop per 1,000 people over 3,000, because you always have that, okay, well, do you have a chief and an officer or whatever? So you'll see that most of these communities, even though their populations are all well sub 3,000, that they still in fact have 2 or 3 officers, right? So going down the line, you got Amory just shy of 3,000, 6 full-time officers. And so they work out to like 2.03 per 1,000, right? They're on the lower end of the spectrum. On the higher end, you got Turtle Lake, right? And I think there's some risk factors there for them that we can all acknowledge exist, right? The casino and some other things, right? But then all of a sudden, they're looking at 1,000 people with 6 officers, which is 5.78 per thousand. Right? The other kind of fudge factor in this is part-timers. I work probably about 0.2 compared to what a full-timer works. But back when I started, I was actually working about 1.2. I was actually working over 40 hours a week because we were expendable and everybody wanted to get hired as full-time cop. So I'm basing it, I think, as a reasonable median as saying 0.33 is the equivalent for a part-time officer for the purposes of these calculations. I think that's very conservative. So, yeah, I mean, those numbers pretty much tell that story.
Yeah, my research is a little different though, just talking to several of the towns around us, the majority are 2, 1 chief, 1 full-time, then they hire part-time. With the exception, like you say, at Turtle Lake, they're definitely, I think they
Sure.
have 6. So
These are the actual numbers taken right from dispatch. So, I mean, the only one around here that's like even on our scale really is Clayton. I didn't go outside of Polk County. But I mean, again, you look at where we're at, our neighbors are New Richmond. Our next neighbor over is Chautauqua, which by the way, crow flies isn't a lot of miles, but it's still significant by way of roads. It's a different county. Glenwood City, I mean, yeah, it could certainly be a comparison. But you also look at regional factors, you look at the sheriff's department and the services they provide in those areas. Brent Walk is pretty straightforward. If you guys have a police department, we are expected to field our calls, right? They respond to emergencies. But that is his take on things. Any questions on the staff numbers? Any other questions on staffing during Clear Lake days? I guess we're driving things based off the 1,000 peak number. We've had it more when we had, what was Rosie? We were expecting a pretty significant surge a couple of years ago when we had that. We actually brought in extra ambulance services. But then, of course, we had severe weather and it was like borderline tornadoes and that kind of cleared everything out really quickly, unfortunately. One thing that I do want to point out, like on the side of the command post, and it's called out in here, is that we do have to have, based on our population estimates, we do have to file a plan with the county. If that is not an optional thing, that is something that we have to do, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But is there any questions on the staffing? Public, welcome to.
Let's keep on.
Mobile command unit, emergency operational readiness. Yep. We did not hit a very happy mark last year with where we put the command post. Again, you can see that packet in front of you. The board has been invited to be part of that in the past. All the emergency services. Did we get all the feedback from the businesses where we put it? No, we did not. We could have done better. As transparent as possible, everything in this packet, there's some answers in here that I don't want to give, but they're right here and we're going to own it and we're going to take care of it, right? That was one of them. Okay. We didn't do that this year. We didn't put it there. But to answer the question as to why it was deployed, there's a lot of reasons. The most significant for me as an emergency manager is the readiness of it, right? Just like a fire department practices with the jaws of life, just like the ambulance service goes out and practices sea collaring and boarding people, we need to be practicing our emergency readiness. So that way, when things happen, we don't have to falter. It's second nature that we can just go to them and do our job, right? I believe that the public would have that expectation that we're able to perform competently. So using these pre-planned events has been a fantastic way to do that. We actually are one of the only agencies in the county that get to use the command post because we've been such an integral part of offering feedback, making it better, and working with the county to do emergency response. I believe there was a couple of agencies on the west side of the county that requested it last year, and it was kind of like what are you giving back to the process, right? So for us, this year in particular, or I should say last year, when we had the command post down here, we actually made the user manual for it. And I worked with Don Burrows to spec some of the technology that would be most useful in it. We made a lot of recommendations how to make it better. And we actually found quite a few flaws with it that were kind of unexpected. But now they are in a better readiness position because of that, right? With that decision in 2025 as well, in 2024, the year prior to that, on June 28th, I believe it was about 10, 11 p.m. Ray and I had just checked off on that Thursday night shift of Clear Lake days when we got called back for a shots fired, threats to kill. And that was out on First Avenue. We responded because there were a group of people that got into a fight. One of them brandished a firearm. It was unclear if the shot was actually fired or was just reported. We got there, it was a full tactical response with a whole pile of county officers. I want to say there was at least 4 in addition to us that responded back to that incident, and he was taken into custody, right? That's the kind of thing that most people around here never hear about because it doesn't make the paper. And unless you were there, people just don't talk about it, but it does happen around here, right? So when we looked at that going into 2025, that was one of those president's considerations of, okay, things can go really bad. What can we do to mitigate that? Everybody put their heads together and said, you know what a good opportunity to utilize a command post to get the emergency readiness stuff underway and to basically just do our best to be prepared for whatever could happen, right? Does that happen every year? No. But going back through with Paul, looking at the last 23 years, we've determined it's about 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 that something huge happens during the Clear Lake days, Clayton Cheese days stretch. We've had missing endangered person that took over 200 volunteers to go find him. We've had missing children. We've had a kidnapping victim that escaped from a vehicle and ran off into the woods. I think you were on that one, weren't you, Cody?
That was like.
Yeah, we had to shut down traffic and take a canine track through there. We had it resolved within 25 minutes because we had our stuff together. We knew what we were doing. So about every 4 years, 3-4 years, something big happens and this pays for itself. Questions from the public on that one? Again, I think moving forward, there's an opportunity for the board to take a more active role. It sounds like you guys want to fingerprint on what we do, and we wholeheartedly welcome that, yes, in hindsight, we absolutely could have, should have, would have talked to Stacy. We thought we had it down the street far enough out of the way that it wasn't right in front of all the bars. Yeah, could have done better. There's some background in here on the actual unit itself and why it was so new, even though it was purchased in 2020, I believe 2022 on our funds. It took 2 years to actually get it upfit to be usable. I will say that 2025, last year, where we had command post out there, was the only year on record where we had 0 fights, 0 citations, 0 arrests. Absolutely 0 activity other than maybe telling somebody they were being loud and drunk in the go. That's the only one on record in 23 years. Even this year, we had a slight increase. I think we had a handful of citations and some other stuff, not counting the car show, but just counting the event itself. And then we had to remove somebody after a fight. Kind of the moral story on that one is everything we do for a reason. It's not just willy-nilly. We don't pluck it out of the air. It's very thoughtful. It's very deliberate. Sometimes we miss the mark. It doesn't get received well. I'm a student of communication, and the way that it's put to me was sometimes the message you send isn't the message that they receive, right? And that's what we're here to clarify. Obviously, things aren't being received the way that they're being transmitted. So we can fix that gap. And there's a point to all of this in the end. It's not just blatant defense, right? I'm gonna kind of try to wrap this up for you guys a little quick because I've been preaching for long enough. I'm sure you're tired of listening to me. The burnouts, again, our officers don't care. I mean, Ray's right here. The board sanctions it. We're good. I have 0 concerns with it whatsoever. Even if there's an assumed risk or liability, that's not a police department decision. This is a board decision to resolve that. Technically speaking, it's Civic and Commerce that would have to comply, but you guys can sanction the event basically by way of that ordinance to say like, nope, it's blessed, therefore it's not disorderly conduct. Does that make sense, everybody?
we would have to do is check with our insurance to make sure.
Yeah.
Because if something were to happen, who's liable? Are we liable for that? Or is it the person that did it? Or is it the
Right.
village or
That's why there's waivers and.
get broke or something? You know,
Our concern with Roger can
And that's-
testify to this,
Why we.
after it's done, is the appearance on Main Street.
That's part of it too. One of
Because our guys
The leaves
worked their
are on
butts
here.
off to get it looking
like
nice.
hell.
You got the flowers, you got everything. And Jim's not here, so I'm not going to badmouth him, but he owned, is it Shotgun Susie's this last year? If you drove through Emerald last year about this time, the street was nothing but burnouts in front of him. If I was somebody driving through there, I saw that, I wouldn't stop there. That's what we're looking at.
That and then liability.
Yeah, liability is a huge one, but, we want, Laura made the comments before, we want people to come in and use the business, stops at the cabin or Midway or, anything or, so that's kind of, appearance wise is a big thing. I've gotten complaints because there's an awning torn on Main Street. We should go up and tell this guy to
Yeah.
fix his awning, things like that people look at. So,
Well, unfortunately, I mean, Tor and I, we are promoting more shows now, so we had to become a business. So insurance is huge. We have to take out a $2 million policy on ourselves because so many people are so happy these days.
Exactly.
So Derby car show, completely different, but I don't allow hot riding down there because what happens? A tire falls off, it goes to the crowd. You've been down there, stuff happens on the track, a bumper flies off. You don't know what's gonna happen.
We were laughing at Cheese Days this year because you can't believe I get 20 years ago, it was normal, but now, you're right there on the track and somebody threw a drive shaft this year.
Yeah. So you think about all that stuff, and I know it's, like I said, it's completely different, and I'm not against burnouts, but I just wanna know if you're walking through the streets with your kid gets hit with a rock or something, what happens? Who is responsible for that? We just wanna have our bases covered, or I didn't. So it's not that we're out to say no, we just wanna work together to make it right.
And I just want to completely be absolutely 100% clear on this. This is not a police department decision. I'm not to sound apathetic, but we don't care. If you guys sanction it and you let them do it, or they tell you to do it or not to do it, we're just on the sidelines. It's just like fireworks. I love fireworks. They're cool, but I don't let my kids do it because it's not right. And there is a dangerous element to it, right? Burnouts, illegal. They get sanctioned or they don't.
Pretty simple, really.
Yeah.
let's keep going.
Sure. Camera systems, community surveillance. This one's been popping up lately. Get text messages asking if we own cameras down on that building and this building and everything else out there. We have cameras on this building. We have cameras on the water treatment plant. The water treatment plant one was actually required by the American Water Association. They're basically saying best practices. It's critical infrastructure and water treatment. Yep. The ambulance has their own, and we do own a flat camera up at 63 and Double J. That camera was paid for by Nielsen's and True Value. That was in response to, I think we had over 20 fraud. It was check fraud, forged checks, and identity theft violations because everybody would come along 63, turn in there, basically pass bad paper. By the time they figured out the checks were forged or whatever, they were gone. And in some cases they were taken. I shop local. That's where I buy all my fresh produce. It doesn't take much to have a $600 cart.
Right.
And these people were filling carts full of wine bottles and cases of beer. And it was almost felony level, at several $1,000s worth. So we put in the flat camera, to my knowledge, and I won't swear to this. I don't think there's been a single instance of those crimes since 2023 when that went in. So I have no problem if you guys want to pull it out. I get the controversy around it right now. People are saying ICE is using it to target illegals, data practices, all this other stuff. That's fine. If you guys direct us to remove it, I have no concerns with that whatsoever. We will remove it.
Is there a subscription that you have to for that?
For the flat? Yes.
Is that like $3,000?
No, we were one of I think we signed a thing saying that we'd keep it for 2 years, like a year ago, and it's 2,000, I believe is what it was.
So where is that in our budget?
It's under operating expense.
So initially it was funded by a combination of Nielsen's and True Value. The intent was to keep it going. I saw the value in the preventative measure of those calls. And honestly, it got kind of a pain, after Nielsen's got handed over to Jason. I had to go through 3 different people to try to get him to write his check. And it was just, I looked at Al and like, this is useful. Can we just write the check and be done with it and not deal with it? So I get it if you want to get rid of it. There are no other ones. There's no other plans to put them in.
Okay.
Any other?
Cameras at the parks too, right?
Yes, chalet building, because there were break-ins happening to there, as well as the disorderly conduct of motor vehicle stuff. People were tearing up the gravel pad down there. And then we actually wound up with a very significant first-degree sexual assault that occurred in the main park. That was really, really quite tragic. And then actually this past year here too, we did have a camera in there before this one this year, but it was directional. It was focused in a certain area. The one this year was actually a substantial battery to a minor that occurred in the blind spot of the camera. So we put a 360 camera in there just to try to stem that. All this stuff is in response to things. It's not just go off and do. Okay, other camera questions?
Yeah,
Sure.
when we are using the cameras and then writing tickets out afterwards, after the fact, are we verifying
Yes.
drivers? So we're not opening ourselves to litigation?
Correct. Yeah, we would never in a million years look at a vehicle and say, I think that was Tom Levinovsky's truck, and then stop him and write him a citation. There would have to be other evidence. For us, the standard of a stop is reasonable suspicion. So if I'm, for instance, down the street and Wendy says, I saw a white sedan tear through the stop sign after sideswiping a car, and I see a white sedan, I'm justified in stopping it. But I'm not justified in arresting that driver. That has to be a higher standard beyond that reasonable suspicion to the level of probable cause to actually issue that citation and make that arrest. And that is, the legal definition is a reasonable person believes that that thing was done by that person. So it's not my standard, it's yours as much as it is anybody else's. Whether that's through validation of eyewitness testimony to the point of satisfaction, or usually, I mean, people usually admit to it. I mean, honestly, some of these, like the burnout tickets, like I've had people say, can you print that real nice and clean so I can hang that on my wall? Absolutely.
Roger knows that one.
I know one that got it. I know that why did there?
0.6 was just touching on the police staffing, which is a community-wide action item. That's really addressing the data, looking at our population back in 1908, was 649 to, what today's numbers are. I do want to point out a few things in relation to that. That is a valid arc showing the population of Clear Lake, but that does not account for hardly any socioeconomic factors or crime data. I'm not saying we're the most dangerous, ridiculous community in the state by any standards, but I can tell you that we weren't investigating child pornography, crimes against children, internet violations, forgery, and check fraud back in 1972 like we are today, right? There are a lot of things happening now that weren't happening then. Whether or not, we want to acknowledge it, there's a way to look at the data. There's a way to look at like how you guys want this community to look moving forward, and I'll get to that in a little bit here. Any questions on the staffing stuff, other than just kind of the general points that we're responding to there? Budget stuff, I'm not going to touch on that a whole lot because, to be quite frank, that's not our thing. In my other life, we start the budgeting process on January 1st. It runs until December. The final board approval happens in December. And then January 1st, we start the next budget cycle. It is a year-long process. It is very comprehensive. Myself personally, I'm in charge of a $7 million budget. We go through the process of saying, I want this, 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 I want this. And then we spend the next 10 months justifying it, fighting for it, getting what we need, and meeting in the middle where we have to, right? Here, it's a very conservative approach. It's if you need it, ask for it. We justify it to you guys. We buy it. If there's an ongoing cost, it's usually implied that that will stay until we're directed otherwise. So I don't manage the budget, neither does Paul. That's really a you guys thing. I think there's room for that to change. I would love to go forward and say, here's what I feel the next year looks like. I just work it. Yep. Policies. This is one that I don't like saying. We are very deficient on policy. There's no other way to say it. we're deficient on policy. Paul and I recognize this. Even our department policies, we're compliant with what the state requires of us. We have a pursuit policy, we have a use of force policy, we have all this other stuff. We do not have a policy stack that is the way that it should be. Paul and I started this already. We have 75 pages that are done and we're still working on finalizing it. It was our goal to have it done a couple of months ago, but you know, life happens, right? So here we are. When we're done with that, that's going to go before you guys to read through. I'm sure you're going to love the bathroom reading of that, but it's important that you see what we do and that you have your fingerprints on us, right? You know, our pursuit policy is going to be one that you have to weigh in. Are we going to be a community that says absolutely no pursuits? Are we going to be one that says take them to the bitter end? Are we going to have a policy that says, you know, thou shall not do this or do that or whatever? That's where you'll have your input. For right now, basically, unless it's been explicitly created in response to something, it probably isn't there. Do we have a policy on the vehicle usage? No. I'm not sure where that line of questioning is headed towards. Have any of our officers ever transported their kids? I'm pretty sure I did it once upon a time as a hardship. Like if my kids are at the school and I'm working, it's like, hey, Paul, my wife can't get the kids. She's on an ambulance run. Can I go run them out to grandma's? What's the alternative? Yeah. If we need to create a policy, absolutely restricting that. Yes. For right now, the policy says chief exception for hardship. That's what's in our operating procedures as a department. Will it change? That's up to you guys. But it's a very specific one. The other part I can say about that is we took the policy manual from, I think it was either Balsam Centuria or Luck or whatever. They had Lexipol provide their policies. They pay, I think it's like $10,000-15,000 a year to have their policy stack. It was 1,000 pages. And as we went through it, it governed the actions of retired officers, which I don't understand the legal basis of that, but we have now taken our 75 pages against that 1,000 pages, and we're doing the comparative analysis to see if we have any gaps with what we have that we want to adopt from theirs. So it's a very deliberate, methodical approach, but it is very, very, very monotonous. Any question on policies?
So we're not driving the squads over to Amory just to drive the squads over to Amory.
Absolutely not. We have a municipal court over there every second Tuesday, whatever it is. We're either going to the hospital, doing follow-up, going over there for training. If they're meeting another Amory officer for something, you know, to my knowledge, no, nobody's driving for the sake of driving to Amory. It would be news to me. If you have information to the contrary, please let us know. Okay.
Well, I was just contacted by a resident or citizen that said that the squad was seen at Amory track meets. Our Clear Lake squad was seen at Amory track meets. I don't know dates. I don't know. Yeah, or some athletic thing.
I had the squad out for Clear Lake days down at the baseball field in Clear Lake.
No, wasn't that? I don't know dates. Like I said,
Yeah, I don't even know anybody that would be involved in that other than if it was Paul meeting up with somebody and they happened to be at the track meet, but nobody here has any ties to Amory.
There's been a couple instances too, that there was one post on Facebook where they had a picture, actually a video of the police squad was sitting at the village hall in Connorsville. Just parked there.
Yeah, that happens. Like if it was recently, it's because we had a construction worker that was up working in Village View. She was sexually assaulted by her boss. The suspect of that worked down there.
That would have been this last fall.
Yes. They went down there 6 or 7 times trying to interview this guy. They linked up with whoever the officer was down there, trying to pin this guy down in his house because he was trying to evade the officers because he knew he was probably going to go to jail if he talked to him. That kind of stuff is very, very common where we'll go to these other communities. We're always in Balsam Lake for court or everything else like that. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have concerns about that, like, please bring them up, right?
It's just so we can give the answer back.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Paul will have all the backup. It's in our day logs. All that stuff gets captured.
How about Elmwood, driving the squads down to Elmwood? You doing business in Elmwood?
Same deal for you. What do you,
That was probably detailing.
Yeah,
Oh, the detailing guy. That was something that was started by Tim Strobush. I like the idea of having cars cleaned out once a year is what we kept going with. I tried to get, Belle Lee. She does, I think it's Bull Creek detailing out there. She is also a vet tech. So I tried to get her to do it because she's local. She said, yeah, I'm really busy. I'll let you know when I have availability. That was a year ago. So, I mean, it's certainly something we can terminate, but I'll tell you, these cars get used, they get abused. The reason that we did it again this year was I thought it was supposed to be the Touch the Truck event where we put the public safety vehicles up at Nielsen's and everybody, all the kids can come out and touch them and climb on them and everything else. And so it's really a good foot forward for the community to polish everything up and have it nice and clean. So if that's an issue, we can certainly look local or we can terminate the price altogether.
So you're saying that we're getting the squats detailed?
Cleaned. I don't care about the detailing. It's that they get literally washed out on the inside. And then they have this ozone thing that clears out the dust because two of our officers were getting kind of like hay fever stuff from the crap that was accumulating in the vents. So they hook up this whole system to it and suck it out of there.
are there any kids that need to do community service that could do it?
And Lyle,
It's been a conversation, actually.
some of that stuff with biohazards, you gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Someone pukes or pisses or goes to the bathroom in the back to school.
And that's one of the other
Yeah, they allow it.
factors. We lost track of that. We have plastic seats in the back because of that. It's not a fun process. So, but again, if that's something that you guys want to terminate, we do it.
I don't know that we'd want to terminate it. I think we'd go.
I just know like Amory Chev offers, they got a whole detail that you can break stuff into. That's a lot closer now, but
Yeah, I absolutely would love that idea.
I think originally this gentleman was down south of Forest.
Yeah, and then you move
Yeah.
or something.
I did see that in the post. You guys were like his first customer or something when he started out, but
Yeah.
Any other questions on that?
Again, I just want to reiterate that we're an open
Yeah.
book. Like if anybody asks us anything, I know Chris was talking about some camera stuff and I'm like, ask me, like, we'll tell you. We literally have nothing to hide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay standing here for the other stuff because Paul's obviously not back yet, so I assume that he's going to the place.
Let's go on to the community interaction. You guys are all right here. And you have something to say. I think you're, then at least you have something else.
You brought
Yeah,
this up.
mine was, so, I asked Al to put this on it's the community interaction and the perception of the police. I mean, I kind of brought it up. Mary kind of brought it up. I did talk to Paul spring, maybe, I think. He and I got together on a Saturday in the break room and had a conversation, like a lengthy conversation about the perception that people that have approached me or that I work with, or, that live in the village, some live outside the village. Other towns that have a perception, the perception is, that people aren't welcome. You better watch out, no matter what you do, you're gonna, you jaywalk, you might get in trouble for it. The perception is there's some arrogance and, condescending or yeah. Tone, and I've experienced some of that, and I've seen others that have experienced that, so I think we need to reset all of that.
Okay.
And, I was born and raised here, so I don't want that kind of a relationship with the police. I don't want anybody in this room to have that kind of relationship. I don't want anybody outside of this room to have that kind of relationship. Your profession, the title warrants respect, right? But you have to have the right people that can earn the respect. And if people don't respect the person, they're not going to respect the position. And we don't want that.
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree 100%. And I think that's one of the core tenets of professional interaction with the community. Absolutely. So I guess, I mean, my question is, we keep hearing, work with the community, work with the businesses. I think Jim Beatty's a prime example. Was doing stuff that was illegal, in conflict with what we were hired to do, literally, like stop illegal stuff. Asking not to do it, a wise member of the community that I respect once said to me, solve these problems at the lowest common denominator, right? That means don't bring a gun to a knife fight. And by way of, if somebody's doing something wrong, we always take the approach of ask them, tell them, show them, like, hey, this is happening. Can we not do this? Stop doing this. Now you're going to get cited or whatever the next thing is. We want to get that lowest common denominator first. And Jim's a prime example of that. There's a lot of conflict back and forth. We sat down, Paul and I went up there and we had a very good conversation. He's like, why do you guys keep dragging me around? Here's why. But that's not the end of the story. Here's how to do it right. And he went, oh, that's all I have to do? Yes. That was last November. We haven't had a follow word since then. Where are the gaps that you guys see, to be specific? We're not understanding where those rubs are with like the businesses or the interaction. And I'm not being obtuse, like we don't know.
Well, I know you had several complaints that you had talked about. I forwarded you a text that I got from somebody that's not even a resident here, was at Clear Lake Days. Pretty concerned, asking for where they can get police complaint forms because just of the basic interaction walking down the street. Not so much that you guys did anything wrong or whoever it was, I don't even know, but just the interaction put people in the space where they didn't want to be walking on the street or standing on the street in front of the bar, things like that. They felt that they were being bullied, kind of get antagonized. Like they were trying to get a reaction out of the person so that they could give a ticket or they could do something like this. That's the things that I heard.
That's what was in the email and stuff, just that right there.
Yeah. So it was just the basic. Like I said, I sent it to Roger and, we got a group of people standing there talking amongst themselves. Some officers come up and, put themselves into that group, started talking, asking questions, making them feel uncomfortable that they maybe shouldn't be there. And so they just kind of dispersed and felt like they weren't really welcome to be in that position.
What was the basis for the contract?
None. It's just basically walking up, whoever was walking up and down the street was just kind of making conversation with people. And then it got to be where, again, little bullying. What are you doing? How much, what do you got drinking? What are you doing? What do you got there? I don't know exactly what was said, but, in the conversations, but this was the text I got from somebody. And I also got another email from somebody as well. And I just forwarded it on to Roger. I know he said he's got some too that, yeah. And I'm sure, people are nervous when you guys come talk to them, whether you did anything wrong or not.
Yeah.
They could have took it the wrong way, but when it's a couple different or several different people talking about it, then maybe we got to look at how, you guys are interacting with the people. Why are they feeling this way?
I think that's a fantastic question.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was brought up, I think Mary actually had it in there, was, we've got the barricades at the end of the main street,
Yeah.
right? And at the end of the night, not at the end of the night, but it was when the bands were done,
Mhm.
then the officers would go down and stand right on the other side of the barricade.
Yeah.
And it was
lean up against some people.
It was intimidating people though. It was intimidating. I mean, you're in your full-fledged uniforms, right? And it was intimidating seeing the officers standing on each end. And I think some people were like, oh, great, I'm already a criminal when I walk past the barricade, because they're gonna see me coming out of that beer tent. And then they're gonna see me coming down the street and heading to my car. And so it's intimidating, right? And I know and I would say on Friday night, it seemed to me that it was more, intimidating. I mean, when an officer is standing, you've got your bulletproof vest on, and the officer is standing at the barricade like this, staring at people. Okay, that's pretty intimidating. And it's like, you know, nobody's.
Because it's not meant to be intimidating. It's after, 18 hours on feet, you're just gonna.
Sure, but I mean, people aren't gonna wanna come up and say, hey, how you doing? Now, Saturday night, I walked out of the beer tent and was walking down to the Midway, and Ray was one of them that was standing on the street with the female officer. They were not by the barricade though, and when I walked by the street, I waved and he waved back, and it was like, okay, there wasn't anything intimidating about where they were standing and how they were standing Saturday night. But, Friday night, when the officer was standing on the other side of the barricade, it was like we had people make comments about it.
May I?
Yeah.
Respectfully. There's two sides to that. We do need to be welcoming, but it also acts as quite a deterrent as well. And that's the other half of the situation, that bad people don't come here because we do have police force here and they are visible. And we're not going to have a fight like they did in Clayton or anything like that. I mean, because we know that we've got people that are going to step in and stop it.
But we have good people coming here too.
Oh, yeah.
They're
And they're not the ones that these guys are after.
But you tell somebody that, I mean, we could tell them that all day long, right? And they're still gonna feel like that, like.
And I respect where you're coming from. The part I would say is, when I work cheese days, we do the same thing. Like, and maybe it's a blind spot for us as a profession. When I worked Balsam Lake Freedom Fest last year and year before, it's even more clustered with the cops. You just sit down at the end because honestly, it's exhausting after, several 18-hour days and people talking to you that you don't necessarily want to talk to, and you still smile. And by the end of that, yeah, there's a little bit of relief to be had by just standing off by yourself at the end and saying, let them do their thing, and it's also a double-edged sword where we park a command post, which honestly, to some extent or another, I thought was kind of cool, and that people would want to come up and we were willing to open it, let them look in. But then we hear that, oh my God, that's the worst thing in the world was, you drove business away. And we want officers to be friendly, but we're intimidating. And so if we stand in front of the wrong establishment for too long, like, are we, where's that balance? Like, how do we, what is the solution to this? I mean, I feel like if we were to do it from the shadows, it would be creepy. and like, we're trying to catch them, driving away rather than standing there saying, don't take your drink past this point. Do you need a sober ride? Those are usually the conversations that we have, after that 11 o'clock threshold on Friday night.
And I think that makes sense. I mean, I can see, both sides, but that does make sense where, you are, they kind of straighten themselves up and go, okay, well, yeah,
Right.
there are police here. Should I really be driving or not?
Can I just add to that for a minute? So obviously Amy, Wendy and I are the chairs, and Amy and I put in a lot of hours. We're one of the first ones there in the morning, and we're one of the few left at the end of the night. And I agree with what you're saying, that it can be intimidating. But on our side too, I sat there and watched an individual came out of the bar, very obviously intoxicated. All he was made to do was either drink his drinks or dump them all. There wasn't any following him. It was just, you can't go back and converse with him. The next night, a local resident was given a ride home. The officer made sure that he got home safely. There was no issues. So I see both sides. I mean, I think, could they have let him walk across the barricades with those drinks and issued a citation? Absolutely. But they chose not to. I can see where you're saying too.
Obviously, we're not gonna hear that one, that part of it. We're gonna hear the bad stuff.
Right, exactly. But I'm saying, so I see both sides.
I'm glad that that is brought up.
Because,
We need to hear the good side.
One of the officers said, hey, I don't know, can I take you home? And he said, the guy was kind of leaning because like, where are you taking me? Like, yeah, you're gonna give me a ride home, But no, just want to make sure you get stopped, home safe. The other guy sat and we laughed. I mean, it was entertainment for me.
One that I think demonstrates at least my personal integrity is, there was a guy who was, I'll say it for the record, he was trashed. He was falling down intoxicated, and he got into we'll call it skirmish down by the Midway. And then they broke up the fight and was like, hey, time for you to go away. And he went up by the bar. And the officer that said, hey, you've had too much to drink, start heading out of here before you end up getting yourself either beat up or arrested. That guy didn't like that very much. And when he got up by raising the bar, he didn't know that I was the guy that he was just friendly chatting to like a half an hour earlier. He thought I was one of the other officers that said, time for you to go home. And he started screaming, F you, you're a piece of like all this other stuff for like 5 minutes straight. And I sat there and everybody, civilians were like, why is he not face down on the ground? And I'm like, he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, could I take him to jail? Absolutely. Wouldn't have even been a question. But I didn't. And he got done with his rant and I said, didn't you just tell me that he literally told me he'd take a bullet for me? And he's like, that's you. You're a cool guy then. And it was like, holy cow, and that is like the stuff that we run into.
We all appreciate the leniency and that you have to go through. But I think what I got out of the complaints, it seemed to me there was more concern about the beer tent was fine. And everybody was okay when they're up at the beer tent, but anybody that was in front of the bars down the street, they seemed to get more interaction that wasn't so pleasant. So when you guys were up by the beer tent, you guys are just hanging out, talking with each other, just kind of watching, listening to the band, carrying on. And when you got to the bar, then it was more stern. You were more aggressive, not you particularly, personally,
Sure.
but they were more aggressive, more interactive, more, dissuasive to try to get people basically to move along or not be there. And I believe they had every right to be in front of that bar just as much as they did in that beer tent. And so
Yeah,
maybe it's a perception. I don't know.
depending on when that happened, after the bars close and we allow them to stand around with their drinks outside for a period of time, but then more or less the permit's done and they need to go. Like we do say, like, because people will do the Minnesota goodbye or the Wisconsin goodbye, whatever you call it, for like 45 minutes of hugging each other. And then it's kind of like, take it on the road, get it out of here, And so there is an element of move along. That's the only time that I can think of where we've done that. And we do that usually 3 o'clock in the morning, half an hour past, where that's supposed to go. I could see how that would be maybe perceived in that light. I'm open to better suggestions for what to do there, obviously, other than just being a little bit more friendly in that area, being mindful, receptive to that. We might see it a certain way from our perspectives, but obviously the message being sent is not the one that was being received. I think that's fair. If there's better places that you'd rather see us stand, not hiding in the shadows or whatever, that makes sense, we're totally open to that. We don't want to make this any. It sucks standing out there for 18 hours. It really does. So if you guys know, it's like, hey, just go chill in the back of the squad car. Like, I'm good with that, whatever the expectations are. We just want to be upfront about them. But we're receptive if you have better ideas. And kind of looking at Ray, I don't know what else other than trying not to look tired at the end of the day, which probably comes across as scary when your face is.
I just had resting Ray face all the time. So
And there's, I think, not to dismiss anyone complaint. That's that person's perspective. Their interaction with law enforcement might be the only one they have that year. Things get blown out of proportion. People see things from their perspective, and like you said, that's not the whole picture either. So where's that balance? Anybody who feels like, they want to stop down and get to know us, we're always open to that.
Okay. What's that, man? What the Blackbrook contract?
Yeah, pretty quickly is how do we run our contract? We have certain amount of hours that we're doing there. Who's paying for that? That kind of thing. How does that contract?
Blackbrook pays for it. We've billed them a total of $90 or $80 this year. $90.
So are we not logging the time we spend over there
We're just not out there that much. So a lot of it's complaint based whenever they get traffic complaints in certain areas, or like the animal control stuff, we're kind of their first line of defense there. When they don't have complaints, we don't go out of our way to turn around to there.
And same with Polk County, when we're called for help with Polk County, are we?
Polk County's mutual.
Yeah, we don't bill for that.
So it's just,
When I worked for the Marathon County Sheriff's Office, I used to have to check out and say that I was out with Red Mountain reports. And I'm sure that's still a practice that they do because they got into a pissing match with the community and saying, wow, our deputies are coming into your town all the time and that's not fair because you're not providing your own police services. So we're going to bill you the, you know, 45, 50, 80, $90 an hour. And so anytime we took a complaint in Red Mountain Township, we had to go literally say 2126 sheriff out with reports for Red Mountain. And they went click and started the clock.
So we're not patrolling,
We are
we're
not
not patrolling any
I
other.
think originally a couple of years ago, when Tim started there. Originally, Blackbird came to us for basically ordinance enforcement, barking dogs, junk vehicles, the stuff that Polk County refuses to come down and take care of.
They asked for, I think it was like, well, he might remember off the top of his head, I think they asked for like 2 hours a week of traffic enforcement randomly on certain roads. So that's historically what we tried to provide. What it amounts to is we'd work a shift here. You know, we basically go take a lap around those areas, wherever it was. A big one for Sally Pickard was 60th Avenue by 80th or 85th, whatever it was.
Sadly, I lived there.
Yes, big bit. Do you remember how many hours a week
Back
that
when-
Blackbrook wanted us to patrol for traffic?
It varied. Sometimes they would extra patrol over by 60th out of evening because of speeders.
Right. But yeah, it was a couple hours a week at best.
Last year, if I remember right, it was like $200 or $300. It's been really going down what we get reimbursed for.
They're changing the board, you know, drove some of that. Obviously, their complaints, sales not on their board anymore, so.
And we don't have any other contracts with like
No.
Clear Lake Township or any other.
At one time, Clear Lake Township was looking at it.
Yeah.
And they actually joined municipal court, but then they realized how much it was gonna cost them. They backed out of it. If you look on the budget thing there, we had Village Clayton at one time. Roger was here. We were looking at maybe merging with Clayton. But then, Clayton kind of backed out of that, or actually, I think we may have backed out of more than Clayton.
I think we did.
I think we did too in the end.
In the end. So, you know, we've looked at different things, but so far nothing's worked out other than the Blackbrook, and it's just the ordinance, mainly is ordinance and a few hours here.
Yep.
When Tim was here, it was a lot more, we were billing, I think the bills were $2,000 or $3,000 for.
The guys are mandated to go out and run like an hour of radar on such and such, and we're less rigid with that. It's more like take a lap.
And you know, we haven't even done that for most of them,
Right.
because, we were short, Ray was out on medical last year and we were short-handed, so we couldn't afford to get out there and do a lot of it unless there was a urgent call or something.
Yeah, that's good.
I would tack on one more thing just for you guys to consider. Worked with the late Mike Flaherty on this, couple months ago, well, actually a year ago. He was big on asking us for what our measurables were. You know, there's a lot of questions in here. There's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of emotion. Right? Because when somebody has a negative interaction, that emotion's going to come out, not the logic. You know, we see that a lot. The way to combat that is to take a deliberate, measured approach to it. You know, Mike had asked, what are your measurables? And that's kind of what you guys are asking here is how do we know you're doing well? You know, one could argue that if there is no crime in Clear Lake, our police department is fantastic. Or is it that we're not doing anything? If crime is running rampant, are we not able to keep up when we need so many more cops? Or is it that we're not doing anything? You know, I'm reminded of the picture a friend of mine sent me once upon a time that showed, you know, everything's normal and happy. And it says, it was an IT joke. My computer's working fine. What do I pay you for? And then the next picture says the computer's going haywire. My computer's not working. What do I pay you for? That's one of the plagues of law enforcement is how do you measure success? And my answer back to Mike was, well, you have to define it. What does success look like? And I'll try to be brief with this, but you know, these members of the community here, each one of them have their own idea of what success is. I have my own idea of success. And one of the measures for me is, can I leave the keys in my car on the street overnight and come back in the morning and have it still be there? My answer right now is yes. I would do that in a heartbeat. I don't think you could do that in Amory, and I don't think you could do that in Clayton right now, right? That might not be Darren's idea of success. That might not be Cody's, right? What all this points to is strategic planning initiative that we started. I have the data because we've had our records management system for 10 years now. I think it's 11, but we got a full 10-year look back where we can pull all sorts of things on the crime trends, what we've done, where we've done it, who's done it, all this other stuff. And we can plot that trend and we can say, okay, this is where we were. This is where we are. And you guys can say, this is where we want to be. Then you answer the question of how are we going to get there? What is your vision of policing? Is it a kinder, friendlier police where we're not worrying about traffic enforcement? Or are we worried about traffic enforcement? Or maybe we're not worried about criminal response and we want that community service officer oriented approach where we're answering questions about, water bills or whatever, or, delivering mail for people and we're done with our work by 8 PM and we're not worried about the emergency response. That's where you guys get to put your fingerprint on this. But I think it's important, as Chris pointed out, to be transparent and involve the community. And I think there's a good opportunity to have a committee of our community members be part of that planning process. I think it would be really healthy. I think it would be a good way to look at stuff, get their input, get their feedback, and really get the fingerprint on this department the way you want it to work. It's a big ask. But
I like that idea though. I mean, that, because they're the ones we're hearing from.
Exactly.
and open the door to them,
Sounds good.
I don't know that you're gonna have 500 people do it, but I think you guys can figure out how you want to manage it.
Figure it out.
Yep.
One other thing, squad cars.
You got your paper, I didn't get a chance to print your stuff
I'll
out.
just on these things. You need one? Happy to read that.
All right.
So our plan is that the Ram truck that we have right now, which is just shy of 100,000 miles, is gonna be turned into for the village.
Was,
And
probably not anymore.
probably not anymore. And
Not at this time.
we need a new squad car. So you usually try to get out from under a squad car at 100,000 miles. And the squad that we're looking at trying to get is a Tahoe, which is more money than what a Ram is, but it offers 365 days a year, the same climate in the back and storage in the back with a pickup truck. We have a small little cab in the back for keeping stuff that has to be climate controlled. And it doesn't work that great. Hence, we want a Tahoe. The other reason for a Tahoe is they don't fit too well in the Durango. On somebody else.
Yeah, it's Jamie, really. That's good.
We've talked about budgeting and stuff, and we put away, we call it a capital replacement fund, money it carries over every year and police car is one of them. And at the end of this year, we'll have basically 40,000 in there. So what's the estimate for?
We robbed
What happened was
a
when
couple
we
years back to get caught up because we had to get a squad.
had to purchase a squad right after during COVID, and instead of being here, it was up here. We paid for it. So it basically wiped out 1 year of us putting that money away. So, and we usually try to do it every 3 years. That's wiped out a year, so basically we'll be on 4 years if we want to replace it, let's say after the first of next year. We put 20,000 away this year, we'll put another 20, so it'll give us 16, but I don't know what a Tahoe is running.
The other problem we need to address too is just getting the squad is gonna be between 60 to 65,000. But that.
And you have to
that with
outfit it.
equipment in it. And the radio that we have now on the Ram does not have the digital capabilities for coding. So even just now on a call that I was going to, I couldn't hear everything that was going on because that radio doesn't receive and transmit on their coded channels. We need to update that. That's not cheap. And then because we're gonna be switching to a different squad, we won't be able to reuse the light system or the cage or anything. So it's pretty much gonna be from the ground up.
Yeah, I guess we would need some estimates.
Yeah, I just say,
What we're
Yeah,
gonna,
well,
we're coming into the budget season in a month or two. Give me an idea of what, let's say a total, a total outfitted,
Number, I'd say 95,000 or below.
and we would be at 60, so we gotta come up with another 30, 35 in the budget, so, or 1 to 2, so. But, that's, where we're at.
Or wait a year.
Huh?
Or wait a year.
So we
You're
haven't-
off, that's 15.
We haven't ordered
That's
anything.
right.
Well,
Let's put it all in one place.
It hasn't been ordered because we put it on hold,
Yeah.
so we know what we got from funding, so that was the biggest drawback. Originally, we were gonna switch all these vehicles around this year, until we realized how short we were, so.
I think we have a really good inroad on getting it upfit. I don't know if any of you know Tristan Mortel, Jenny Bergman is his mom. He works for Washington County as a radio manager or radio technician, I should say. I work with him in my other life quite a bit. He is incredibly sharp. And with all that he does for Washington County in the radio system, I mean, they have hundreds and hundreds of squads and radios. He's got some upfitters that he works with on a regular basis. And he said, yep, I got a guy that'll more or less do it for as cheap as humanly possible, but at the friends and family discount. So looking to save some dollars there, but we're still gonna budget as if it was, that number. Hope that it comes down, because I mean, I'm sure all of you are well aware, everything has doubled in price in the last 4 years. I have no reservation that it would not still increase, between now and even February, unfortunately.
And if we do, we'll sell the old one, that will take some, and I don't know what the old one's gonna be worth. I think when we sold it 4 years ago, we got $10,000 for it. So that, that revenue would offset what we're buying for, pay for the new one. So that is, but the more you run it, cheaper that price, the sale.
It rolls over the 100,000 mark.
But then we can just sell it outright too and make it people.
Right. All right, well, I'd say bring some quotes or whatever and we'll have to decide from there and see how we do it.
We can make it run until the end of the year.
Yeah.
No problem.
Anybody got anything else? This,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second, motion made, seconded, they're there in favor, right?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime you got questions, have contact for Amy Chip. I will happily